So why did you start capturing Christianity? Tell us about this journey.
Good question. So let's go back a ways. So back in, I think, 2012, my brother came out as an atheist to my family. And that really kind of took me by surprise because I went through my own little period of doubt while I was in Bible school right after high school. And basically what I was doubting was Jesus's existence. I was like, well, how do we know that any of this stuff is real? How do we know the Bible is real? And what was interesting is I went through about a week of really serious doubts, and it was like really gripping me, a lot of anxiety and stuff. And then one of the teachers in my class, and this school is not really known for this type of thing, but one of the teachers mentioned that there was a guy named Josephus, who was a Roman Jewish historian living during the time of Jesus, around that time. And he wrote about Jesus. He wrote a lot of stuff about Jesus. And you can go and read his works. And so I was like, that's really cool if that's true. And so I checked into it, and yeah, it's a fact. Josephus was writing about Jesus and the crucifixion and stuff that happened to him and his people. And that was it. That was all that I needed in order to sort of get back in line and do my Christian thing. And so I didn't really think about those doubts or the evidential side of my belief up until the point that my brother came out as an atheist.
What was that like? Because do you come from a Christian family?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our whole family's Christian. It was actually my brother-in-law who told me first, and he just called me up and he was like, "Hey, I have something serious to talk to you about." And he and I, like, we're big jokesters. Like we joke about everything. He's basically like my big brother. Okay. Like I've known him almost longer now than I haven't known him, because he was introduced to our family when I was really young. So he told me, he was like, "Hey, look, Trevor, something's going on with him, and we need to talk about it." So he told me, and right after that, I set up a meeting with my brother. I was like, "Hey, let's talk about this." And so we had a meeting, and it was awful. Well, when we first started, there was an elephant in the room, and neither of us wanted to talk about it.
It was just the two of you.
There was the two of us and his wife. Mm-hmm. She was there. I don't know if she was in the room or if she was in the other room, but she was in the house. So we got there, and I think we set a meeting out for like a week after I texted him or initially called him. And so during that time, I was like doing everything I could to try to like find something to defend what I already believed in Christianity. So I found William Lane Craig during that time, and I found On Guard, which is a book that he wrote, basically defending or giving sort of an introduction to apologetics. I watched some of his video clips, and so completely unprepared. I mean, I like literally just found out about him, watched like a couple of his YouTube videos, debates. And so I went into this discussion with him just prepared to just beat him over the head with this stuff I literally learned like 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. And so the discussion was very bad. It did not go well. And one of the things that I give a talk on this sort of subject, how to share your faith with skeptics. And this is one of the things that I talk about, is that if you go into a situation like this where you're underprepared and all you want to do is defend what you already believe instead of really searching for the truth, you're going to have a bad time. So that's something that I learned, and I've sort of thought about a lot more as the years have gone on. And I know that we may be getting off track here, but
no, this is great. This is exactly what I want to hear. I mean, this is so helpful to people because I've had those conversations as well.
Yeah, so it's got to be about truth. If it's not about truth, then you're just going to end up defending something that you grew up believing.
Right. And you're almost just sort of presuming what their response to your argument will be, and you're not even listening to the person.
You're not listening to them. You're not taking seriously what they're doing. And another thing is that when my brother was going through this period of doubt and that eventually led him to atheism, I didn't see any value in that. I didn't see any value in the courage that it takes, for example, to really question something that you've grown up believing. It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And I think...
make a decision that will be unpopular with your family and those you love.
Right, yeah.
It's a difficult thing to do.
So I didn't take any of that kind of stuff into account when we originally met. And it's really only something that I've recently started to reflect on a lot, is that like a lot of this stuff is not easy to do.
Yes.
And a lot of them a lot of them as in atheists, a lot of them will have conversations with each other on how difficult it was at first. And
yeah. I mean, imagine what that would be like for you right now if you became an atheist.
It would be awful in a lot of ways.
You started questioning and at some point it just tips and you're like, I don't think I believe anymore. Which would be, I think we talked about this last night in the car, it's doubly difficult since you're beginning to sort of make somewhat of an income through doing this.
Right, yeah. So
laborer deserves his wages. It's a good thing that you're making money. I hope you'll make a lot more. But we have to be honest about the fact that like we're invested in this in a way that we're not just partial sort of observers. And
right. I think for me, because it was only a very recent transition. So I was doing this. I had no intention of doing this full time. Like I was a photographer, that was my profession. And so I was completely fine with just doing that basically the rest of my life. So I didn't, as I got into apologetics and to philosophy, that wasn't like one of my goals, was to be this apologist and do all of these things. Like that was not the goal. So the way that I went about, the sort of methodology that I used in order to discover truth hasn't changed at all. So thinking more about the consequences, like you were saying, there is that fact of like, if I were to change my mind, that would have a big impact on the ministry and sort of other things and family and everything. But I guess what sort of grounds me is the fact that the methodology that I used is completely the same.
I like that, yeah.
So it's...
You mean when you engage people online and when you host those debates on your shows? And
yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to this search for truth. And I know a lot of people on both sides of this. If you're a Christian, you're like, oh yeah, he was just searching for truth. And if you're an atheist, you're probably thinking he wasn't really searching for the truth. But I think that's, as I look back,
we attribute poor motives to each other, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Just like what you said, like with your brother, you attributed poor motives to him. You didn't take...
I couldn't see the positive.
Yeah, you didn't see the kind of virtue. I mean, obviously, we don't want anyone to be an atheist, and we pray that he would come back to the Lord. But that does take a certain amount of courage to stand up and choose to go against something.
Well, and also the Bible tells us to sort of test the spirits, right? And so we want to test whether or not our beliefs are true. We don't just want to believe everything.
Yeah.
So I think that there's virtue in doing that.
And one way I find is it makes it easier to be a little more kind of balanced in a debate is I sometimes like to ask myself the question, if someone's presenting an argument, okay, what's the most that proves? Right? So if they're taking aim at the contingency argument or the Kalam argument or something like that, I could go, okay, let's say they're right. What's the most this proves? Okay, the most this proves is this is a bad argument for God's existence. That's okay. Like that doesn't prove that God doesn't exist. So I should be able to talk about this and search for the truth with the other person.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think I've taken the same strategy.
Yeah.
So it's important to think about where the argument goes and what are the actual implications.
Yeah.
A lot of people will argue against something that happened in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And really what that boils down to is an argument over inerrancy. It doesn't boil
argument
down
over
to
inerrancy or just the way it's being interpreted. Or
oh, yeah, exactly. It doesn't even
options.
have to be that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's multiple ways to interpret a passage. And
so obviously your brother, Trevor, you said his name, he doesn't mind you speaking about him.
No. Conversations that we've had, he's totally open to it.
Yeah. And, so in that initial conversation, who was better? Who did that better, or were both of you just blowing up at each other?
It was kind of that, just blowing up at each other. And a lot of things that I did during that conversation that I've thought about a lot more now is another one of the things that I did instead of searching for truth is that I was shooting from the hip a lot. So he would raise some objection, just be like, oh yeah, well, let me just respond to that this way. And that's something that I hate to see in other people when they do it. But for some reason, I wasn't thinking about it in this context of like...
We just wing it. Sometimes I'll do that. I don't know what I'm talking about, and I'll just wing it and hope that it lands well.
Yeah, exactly.
It rarely does.
Yeah, just throw anything and hope it sticks. Yeah. And that's what I was doing. And I'm not saying that he was, perfectly giving all of these super logically deductive arguments and everything. It didn't happen that way at all on either side. But that from my point of view, I think as I look back, that's what I was doing.
Have you had conversations since?
Yeah,
where it's been a lot more productive?
Yeah, I think that we've had some productive conversations, but it's not something that sort of rules or all of our conversations.
Nice.
That was something I had to realize later on as well. Is that what my goal was after that conversation was to just, every time I talk to him, got to talk to you about apologetics, got to talk to you about this new argument that I just learned for God's existence. And eventually I learned that that's not the right way to do this, because you're not really caring about him. You're just
He's a problem to be fixed.
Or not even him. It wasn't about him at all. It was about trying to make myself look better, more reasonable, and to just sort of win.
I see.
And so it wasn't about him. It wasn't about loving him, really caring about what he's going through at that moment and everything. So
This is such a great point. Yep.
So I switched my focus from trying to win, to just loving him. And that's what I focus on now, is when we do have a conversation about it, we have it and it sort of happens organically, but that's not the focus of everything that I try to do with him all the time, is to just try to like win this apologetic battle.
Yeah, I think this would be great advice to people listening, because we all have people in our family who might believe things differently to us, either politically or religiously. I think it's important that we take a holistic interest in the person. I mean, we've all had people in our lives who we get the sense that we're doing something they disagree with, whether that be a Mormon missionary or a friend who thinks we shouldn't be engaging some sort of behavior. If all they did was talk to us about how we needed to change, we wouldn't want to be their friend. But if we believed that they loved us, and we got to talk to them about what show we're watching and what games we're into and what we're looking forward to about this coming summer, then you can have a conversation that I think will be a lot more helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think it's important. This is hard to see in yourself. The point in taking a holistic interest in the person is not necessarily to make them convert. Mm-hmm. And that's what's hard. Because you're like, oh, that's just another strategy. I'll pretend to be interested. It's like, no, just love the person. So when I came back from Rome, when I was 17 years old, came to Christ, my sister Emma, she wouldn't mind me saying this, was an atheist. She had read Dawkins and she was, I think, pro-choice and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it was the same as you. Like every time we got into an argument, I would lay it down, And I think because I was older, perhaps, and maybe had read a little more, I was pretty good at like showing where she was wrong.
Yeah.
But she was wasn't willing to listen to it, and I'm not sure I blame her. And she's actually a Christian today, thank God. She's doing beautiful work in Brisbane, Queensland,
That's
Australia.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, if you enjoyed that clip, you will absolutely love the full interview, so click right there to enjoy the whole thing. Also, a big thanks to these groups who made that interview possible. Learn more in the show notes below about these guys. They're absolutely incredible and honored to have them as sponsors. Oh, and also, if you haven't subscribed yet, click subscribe and then that bell button. That way YouTube will be forced to let you know when we put out more content.